Welcome to this episode of Step by Step. What is 3D printing? Well, a lot of you have heard me talking about 3D printing and the different things I make. So what is it? Well, simply put, 3D printing is a type of manufacturing method, a fairly new way to make things, and more importantly, it's how many products will be made in the future, including things like cars, houses, jewelry, art, food, clothes, musical instruments, prosthetics, and even live human transplant organs. Actually, all of those things can be made today with 3D printing, including the heart. Isn't that amazing? People around the world are now able to design and make things on their own without the help of a manufacturer by using their own computer and a 3D printer. It opens the world to a whole new generation of creators. Now, I'm using the word printer and printing quite a bit, which has a little bit different meaning than what you're used to. Here, the word printer is a more loosely used term which refers to a device that can make things, rather than a paper printer that you are familiar with. All right, well, that's a lot to take in. So what does that all mean? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today on Step by Step. Thanks for joining me today on this episode of Step by Step. If you like what I'm doing here, please hit the like button below and subscribe to my channel. You can also find me on Facebook, Etsy, and Shapeways, where I sell many of the things that I create. I also make some restoration car parts and other fun things for car enthusiasts on my Scirocco printed parts shop, which you can find on Facebook and shapeways.com. So let's get started with today's episode. 3D printing is a big topic, and it's something that we can talk about literally for days. I'd like to keep these videos somewhat short, so let's not do that. Instead, let's talk a little more about what it is, then we'll dive a little further into personal 3D printing. So, a main advantage of 3D printing is that stuff can be made on demand. A manufacturer of things can now make products as they are needed, rather than having to tool up and make many of them at once, then storing them someplace. Storing lots of things takes up lots of space, which costs lots of money. So 3D printing can reduce a manufacturer's cost greatly, and they only make what they need when they need it. Another excellent advantage is prototyping. A person inventing or creating something can make a prototype of a product at a fraction of the cost of actually having to make one. But the real magic of 3D printing is that everyday people just like you and me can make things ourselves. Depending upon the 3D printer you had, you can make stuff out of plastic, metal, gold, and other materials that mimic wood, which can be stained, ceramic, or other materials. You can literally design and make your own product. So let's dive a little further into what a personal 3D printer is and how it works. So let's start by simplifying it in something you're very familiar with, a printer that prints on paper. Today, most everyone has one that looks like this, or maybe you have one of these bigger ones where you work. The printers that we use today print in 2 dimensions, or 2D. You have a flat piece of paper with words or pictures printed on it using ink. A little more than 40 years ago, these printers didn't exist. Before the mid-1980s, people used typewriters or drew what they wanted using paper and pen. Then dot matrix came out. Remember those noisy things? Then laser printers came out, and they were really expensive, but they printed great and quick. Back in the day, these things could only print in black and white, but over time technology advanced and printers became faster and cheaper and could print in color too. And now most everyone has a printer in their home, and the typewriters are in museums. What used to cost thousands of dollars, then hundreds of dollars, is now down to under $50 for a thing that can scan, copy, fax, and print beautiful documents in full color. So the next step, let's imagine that you have a picture that you printed like this sunflower. Now let's take that same printed picture and imagine that you wanted to turn it into something like this. Well, how would you do that? Well, imagine that the ink printer could go back over the picture over and over again, adding ink with each pass. It would take a lot of ink, but eventually the picture would become raised and start to take on a 3rd dimension. Now imagine if you replace the tiny layers of ink with a thin layer of plastic instead. Then you can make something like this or this. Well, that's what most personal 3D printing is. It's just laying down layers of plastic which builds up to create something. Now, without going into too much more detail about other types of printers, there are other printers that use liquids or resins or other things to make things 3D in different ways. But the premise is still the same. And just like people didn't have regular printers before the 1990s, and now everyone does, in the future printing abilities will advance, and it's very possible that everyone will have a 3D printer or at least easy access to one. To show you how it works, here's a quick time lapse of my printer creating the sunflower that you saw earlier. As you can see, the printer is literally creating the sunflower by building it up through layers of melted plastic. The printer feeds the plastic through the nozzle and melts the plastic as it moves around, creating the sunflower shape. The temperature of the nozzle is currently 220 degrees Celsius or 430 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot stuff which is needed to melt the plastic. The rolls of plastic that you see on top of my printer currently cost about $20 each and are all available almost anywhere online, including Amazon. And from that roll of plastic, I can make lots of things. I can also buy different types of plastics that are harder or softer or have different colors. Or I can buy a roll of metal. This printer can print in metal. So the next question is, how much does a good 3D printer cost? Well, this one you're looking at costs about $800. You need to have some technical knowledge and you'll play around with it some to get it to work right, but as you can see, it works great. And there are other options of printers online that you can buy that might be a little bit more money or a little bit less money, but this one is a really good one for the value, and it's the one I recommend. So how do I make stuff? Well, to make stuff you can download 3D models for free from several different websites like Thingiverse. Here are a few things I've downloaded and printed, but there are literally hundreds of thousands of things that people create and share online which you can download for free. Many of them are trinkets or art, some are just for fun, some people create characters, but there are also a plethora of functional things too. From most of these sites you can download and print for free, but you're not allowed to sell someone else's work unless you have their permission. If you want to design your own things, then you'll need to learn how to make 3D models using CAD software like FreeCAD, Tinkercad, or other online software options, or you can get really fancy and learn how to make something in Mesh using MeshLab or several other mesh creating programs. The stuff that I make for my car parts are designed in FreeCAD because I need to make them with exact measurements. But I also make some fun things too, like this cake topper that I made for my neighbor's daughter's birthday. So what can you do with 3D printing? Well, 3D printing is a burgeoning field literally exploding with opportunities. It's not just about printing knickknacks that you download from the internet. People have started businesses around 3D printing, designing and creating jewelry or art or many other things like I've done with my car parts. People have taken their existing businesses and they've used 3D printing to enhance it by making prototypes or making new products for themselves. And you don't have to have a 3D printer of your own to do this. You can design whatever it is that you're making in a 3D model package and then have a professional printing company like Shapeways do the printing for you. I do this with some of my car parts. They have a storefront on their website where you can sell stuff, or they integrate into Etsy and Shopify or have a custom interface as well. So you can design, create, sell, and make money with 3D printing. So now that you have a better idea of what 3D printing is, maybe it's time to think about what you might do with a 3D printer of your own. Well, that's it for this episode of Step by Step. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, remember to hit the like button and subscribe below, and view some of the things that I create on my Facebook page or my Etsy store. We'll see you next time on Step by Step.